So, a lot of people right now are having the experience where their friends are telling them that they're going to drop out of their life and go back to school to become a therapist. And it's not the friend that you would necessarily expect. It's not the ones who are really well put together. This is the friend who you've most recently Venmo'd for bail money. These are not the people who spent their 20s journaling and drinking chamomile tea. It's the ones who saw God in small claims court. And this makes you look at them and you're like, wait, you? No, that sounds dangerous. Because we think of therapists as like beige, calm, hydrated, people who have a filing system, people you'd be happy to take advice from because they know how to get through this with some sense of order. Meanwhile, your friend has sent novel-length heartbreak texts, and now they're going to get licensed to treat attachment wounds. But here's the thing. A great therapist is not necessarily great at life. They're just a person who's great at their job. So being a messy person isn't necessarily a liability. There are drawbacks, and if you are a very messy person, you probably are going to have to shore up some weaknesses like becoming organized and developing a work ethic. But in general, your difficult past does not have to be a liability. In fact, it can be a very key asset if you're going to become a healer. So let's discuss. Let's look at the strengths and the weaknesses of messy people going and becoming therapists. Disclaimer. So I am Harry Dreyfuss. I'm an associate marriage and family therapist, and this is educational. It is not therapy. I am not your therapist. But if you live in California, I could be your therapist. Put that link, or the link for that is in the thing. I'm sure you've had this experience of telling somebody in your life something that is difficult for you, something that you're a little bit ashamed of, and you get the response, wait, you did what? You did what? What did you put in your mouth? Don't you know that's bad for you? And look, maybe we shouldn't have put that thing in our mouth, but we already knew that. And this is the classic mistake people make when they're listening to somebody else's confession. They think that that is the time to teach them the right way they should have behaved. What they don't realize is that when someone is hurting, that's not the time for them to learn. In order to learn, you have to feel safe. You have to feel not judged. When we look at what actually makes therapy effective, an environment of non-judgment ranks very, very high. And non-judgment, it's not just a personality trait, it's a skill that we learn from being in contact with our own shame. It's hard to sit in someone else's fire if you have never burned. Like if you've lived your whole life believing that something is just wrong and you've successfully avoided doing it your whole life, then when someone comes and tells you that they've been dabbling in this or they're straying into this danger zone, it's really easy to be like, don't you know that's illegal? Why haven't you found a job? Don't you know you need money? Why are you pursuing someone who isn't your spouse? You have a spouse. Drugs are bad. Do you want to die? Do you plan on dying? You want to die? That's not good. Have you tried just stopping? Like if you've never detonated your own life, then you can look at someone else's explosion as like rude. If you've never had anxiety, it's easy to treat someone else's panic attack as just a call for attention. If you've never had depression, you might think a good medical intervention is to say, cheer up. And it's not impossible for people who've had kind of perfect lives to be empathetic and imaginative and non-judgmental. I think it's just harder because it's easier to relate to someone's inadequacy if you have a good sense of your own inadequacy, your own experiences of wishing you could heal and failing and feeling regret and feeling shame. And if you look at it from the perspective of the client, like not everybody wants to talk to a saint. Some do. Some people want to find like a master, someone who has just been well above the problems their whole life so that they can say, tell me the secret, tell me what I'm supposed to do. But not most of us. I feel like most of us are actually scared off by people who are too perfect. Like think about your deepest secret right now. Do you want to tell that to someone who's never had any kind of experience with what you're talking about? Or do you want to tell it to somebody who can say, I have been to the same dark valley you are in now, and I've come out the other side. That nothing human is alien to me. Not your panic, not your lust, not your relapse. So in this way, the difficulties that you have faced in your messy life can become assets, but they can also get in your way. We can become hyper-judgmental of people who share our same problems if we still judge ourselves. Or we may start just compulsively sharing our story. You see this a lot in addiction circles where someone will get out of rehab, they'll feel very solid in their recovery, and so then they want to spread the good news and they become therapists or counselors. But their primary tactic is just to tell their story over and over. To everything somebody says, they're just like, oh yeah, that's just like me when I was in my recovery, because they think in the story of their recovery, which has worked for them, are the keys to everyone's recovery. So they say it over and over, like, hey, the keys to your recovery are right here in my life, and I'm telling you again and again, why haven't you seen it yet? And in that repetition, you can see that they're actually not able to understand the other person outside of the prism of their own experience. They cannot see that another person is both similar and different. So that's why in our training, we're supposed to go through therapy on our own, and we work under supervision. One of the reasons why we do supervision is so that we can try to untangle whether our empathy is actually turning into projection and autobiography. And honestly, that's not just a therapist thing. Like, this is a key to empathy that everybody should know. In your friendships, in your marriages, in your family, it's so tempting to make somebody feel safe and seen by saying to them, oh, me too, to whatever difficult thing they're saying. You just want to go, totally, I've been through that. And you understand there is a merit to that. You're trying to say you're not alone, but at the same time, you might also make them feel like there's nothing left to be understood. I get it. What you really want to be able to communicate is that the pain that I have had will inform how I relate to you, but I still want to know how your experience is unique. The trick is to let your pain tune your ears, not your mouth, to listen from your scars, but then to speak from your training. And there is this beautiful art to be able to communicate that you relate to somebody's story without having to tell them why. You don't have to jump into the way that what they just went through also happened to you. It can also just happen in the presence that you have, in the way that you respond, the way that what they said doesn't frighten you. You just nod along. Maybe you touch your heart and you show that what they just said is not alien. It doesn't disturb you. You've seen it before many times, maybe in yourself, and you're not shocked. That is the miracle of really strong presence. Your story can be felt without always having to be heard. So if you've had a messy life, becoming a therapist might be a great thing to do. Therapists are in many ways just doing something that I think everybody should find some way to do, which is making use of the person that you have been. Your life, with all of its flaws, is entirely unique. No one has had exactly the same experiences that you have. You're a special snowflake with all these holes and like weird imperfections. And you just want to ask yourself, rather than letting my life story be filled with these just mistakes, how have each of those imperfections perfectly prepared me for something? Every imperfection has some benefit, some obviously more than others, but all imperfections, all mistakes, all past experiences have at least one. And that is, they make you more useful to the next person who makes that same mistake. That's true for everything, even the darkest things you can imagine. Even if you killed somebody, and you have truly changed, you really now have a better mind and a better will, you might be the most useful person on the planet for the next person to have had that experience and wants to change. And they're just terrifyingly alone. And they're frightened that there is no hope for them and that no one will ever relate to them. I said that once to a group of addicts about why their addiction experiences make them the best people for a struggling addict to relate to. And they were part moved, and also one of them raised their hand and was like, yeah, but like, I don't want to have to listen to everybody just because I'm qualified to, because I get it. And that's true. Not everybody has to do that, but the people who want to become therapists, like that's kind of what you're going to do. So having a difficult life isn't like the biggest important part of being a therapist. It's also being good at certain people skills. You like talking to people, you want to keep doing blah, blah, blah. But having those imperfections, they're really not a liability. In many ways, they make you an alchemist of regret. Someone who doesn't have to erase somebody's pain or erase their mess, but you can compost it. And another reason it's good for someone who has had sort of a life detonate on itself before they go and become a therapist is that our clients usually are facing an experience that has either turned their life upside down or will. Like they've lost a job, or maybe they need to leave a job. They got in a divorce, or maybe they need to get one. These experiences of a world ending are incredibly frightening, and it can make you so much more useful to them if you have genuinely had your own life turned upside down and you've come out of it. So if you're really messy, yes, you need to become organized, have a work ethic, do your own healing, especially to the point where other people's trauma doesn't trigger yours. But the secret that most therapists know, and also friends of therapists know, is that therapists are still messy, wounded people. And that's okay. You can be someone who is seeking healing and offering healing at the same time.